2026. The FIFA World Cup was supposed to unite the world. Instead, what we're witnessing is a masterclass in how imperialism operates in the 21st century. Not with soldiers and territory grabs, not with formal occupation, but something more insidious, extraction and exclusion dressed up in the language of sport and entertainment. A Somali referee named Omar Artan arrived at Miami International Airport to officiate football matches. He was the first Somali referee ever selected for a World Cup. An honor, an achievement. The Confederation of African Football Men's Referee of the Year 2025. He was detained for 11 hours, interrogated about Somali politics and Al-Shabaab, then deported without explanation. A U.S. official later said it was due to suspected association with members of terror organizations. When he returned home, thousands gathered at Mogadishu airport. They draped him in the Somali flag and hoisted him on their shoulders. A hero's welcome, not because he'd accomplished something on the field, but because he represented African dignity on a world stage. And they took that from him. FIFA's response? President Gianni Infantino said people should chill and relax. Meanwhile, in Canada, Ghanaian midfielder Thomas Partey was denied entry. Why? He faces rape and sexual assault charges in England. Charges he denies. He has not been convicted. But Canada's immigration law allows them to ban people with reasonable grounds to believe they committed certain crimes. Conviction not required. So Partey was excluded from Canada while remaining eligible to play in the United States. Same continent, different rules. Different nations exercising imperial power over who gets in and who doesn't. This is not accident. This is system. The World Cup was supposed to unite the world. Instead, it is exposing how imperialism divides it. The powerful want us to believe that the world cannot be rewritten. We're here to prove them wrong. Subscribe now to uncover the erased histories of solidarity and struggle. Because the future doesn't belong to the boardrooms. It belongs to the collective. Let's be clear about what's happening. FIFA didn't choose the visas. The host nations did. The United States, Canada, Mexico, their immigration authorities made the decisions about who could enter. According to FIFA, 15 Iranian officials were denied entry. Iraqi players reported intensive and sometimes invasive searches. An Iraqi team photographer was blocked entirely. But here's what's striking: the pattern. Nations that oppose American foreign policy found themselves systematically excluded. Nations aligned with Western interests faced no such barriers. This isn't bad security. This isn't coincidence. This is imperialism using immigration law as a weapon. The World Cup that was supposed to bring humanity together was instead bringing the ugliness of imperial borders into every interaction. June 13, 2026. A vehicle was transporting England's World Cup equipment from Florida to Kansas City. Soccer balls, cleats, signed jerseys, about $18,000 worth. The vehicle was robbed. 2 men were charged with receiving stolen property. But this was just the beginning. Days before, a shooting erupted 4 miles from England's base camp at Swope Soccer Village in Kansas City. 9 people were injured. This happened in the supposed heart of the most civilized nation on earth. The nation that lectures everyone about democracy and human rights. But the irony was deafening. Here's a World Cup supposed to unite the world, and it's happening in a country where stadiums need armed guards, where equipment gets stolen from national teams, where shooting incidents occur near international training facilities. What does that say about the nation hosting it? What does it say about a system that prioritizes a sporting event over basic safety, over border fairness, over human dignity? But the real story isn't about referees denied or officials blocked. The real story is about ordinary people. It's about who football actually belongs to and who FIFA has decided it belongs to now. Let me tell you about a man. His name is Andy Milne. He's from England, and he's 72 years old. Andy Milne has done something that most people will never do in their entire lives. He has attended 9 World Cups, 9 tournaments, across decades, across continents. 9 times, he has stood in the presence of the greatest football tournament on earth. The first time, Spain. 1982. He was a young man. He queued for 3 days to buy a single ticket. Cost him 800 pesetas. Not much money, but it was worth every hour of waiting, because that ticket represented something sacred. Access. The idea that if you were willing to wait, willing to sacrifice time, you could be there. He still has that ticket. 1982, Spain. 800 pesetas. It's his most treasured possession. That was the World Cup for the people. Now, 44 years later, Andy Milne is 72. He absolutely knows that this might be his last World Cup. Perhaps his final chance to stand in a stadium and feel that electric moment when humanity gathers to watch something greater than itself. So for the 2026 World Cup in America, Andy did something that pains him to say. Something that reveals everything about what football has become. He drew from his pension, his retirement savings, the money he put away for his final years. He took money that was supposed to carry him through old age and spent it on a ticket to the World Cup. Why would an old man do this? Because a semi-final ticket costs $11,000. A ticket to the final costs up to $11.5 million. And Andy couldn't afford it. FIFA President Infantino, when confronted with these prices, didn't apologize. He joked. He said if someone pays $2 million, he'd personally bring them a hot dog and a Coke. An old man is spending his pension, and the president of world football is making jokes. But Andy Milne is not alone. His story is multiplied across the world, with different faces and different currencies. Consider Africa. For many African nations, World Cup qualification is not just a sporting achievement. It is their only chance at international celebration. It is the moment their nation stands on a global stage and is seen. It is the moment their people, who have struggled, who have suffered under colonial legacies and economic exploitation, get to say, we are here, we matter. The Global South qualifies for the World Cup at the cost of immense sacrifice. These nations spend money they don't have. They invest in training facilities. Their players train in difficult conditions, often without the resources that European teams have. And then their fans, the people who have supported these teams through decades of poverty, get priced out. A ticket that costs $11,000 in America is the equivalent of years of salary in Ghana, in Haiti, in Senegal, in Nigeria. It's not a choice to attend. It's an impossibility. Then there's Scotland. Scotland hasn't qualified for the World Cup in 28 years. 28 years. That's more than a generation of Scottish children who have never seen their national team on the world's greatest stage. Imagine that. Imagine waiting 28 years for something. Imagine telling your children, we're finally going. We're finally going to see Scotland at the World Cup. And then the coach, the man whose entire professional life is dedicated to Scottish football, makes a statement that breaks your heart. He says, "My biggest wish is that people don't put themselves into too much debt trying to get there." A coach is begging his own fans not to bankrupt themselves. This is what FIFA has created. A system where the greatest moment in your nation's football life, a moment your country has waited 28 years to have, is accessible only to the wealthy. But here's what people don't understand about football. Football is not a luxury. Football is democracy in its purest form. All you truly need is a ball, open space, and willing players. Pelé, Messi, Ronaldo, Maradona, Neymar, and Zidane all rose from humble beginnings, kicking rag balls or worn-out leather on the streets. For them, football wasn't just a game. It was their escape from poverty and, in many ways, their salvation. But football is not just for the exceptional few who become stars. Football is for the fans. Football is the ritual of the people. It's the moment when a person working a brutal job, living a difficult life, can stand with thousands of others and feel connection, feel joy, feel unity. That's why fans travel. That's why they save. That's why Andy Milne, at 72 years old, is willing to draw from his pension. Because football is not entertainment. Football is a need. It's oxygen. It's the thing that makes life worth living when everything else is hard. And FIFA has commodified it. FIFA has taken humanity's greatest democratic ritual and turned it into a luxury good accessible only to billionaires. Now let's talk about the money. FIFA generates $13 billion from this World Cup. $13 billion, claimed as non-profit. FIFA says 87% goes back to football. The remaining 13%? Hidden. We don't know where it goes. But here's what we do know. $2.7 billion is distributed as development funds to FIFA's 211 member associations. These are the national football bodies from every country. For poor nations, this money is real. It builds academies. It creates women's football programs. It develops talent. But it's also something else. It's political currency. FIFA has 211 member associations. Each gets one vote in FIFA elections. And Gianni Infantino, FIFA's president, understood the arithmetic perfectly. When he first ran for president in 2016, his promise was direct and simple. I will give every member association $5 million in development funds. He won the election. After his first re-election, he increased it $6 million per association. After his second re-election, $8 million per association. Now he's running again, promising another increase. This is not development. This is vote buying. This is bribery with a development label. The advocacy group Fair Square proved this in 2024. These funds are allocated not to develop football, but to encourage member associations' political support for the president. So poor nations, desperate for these funds, vote for FIFA's president. And officials in those nations, faced with weak accountability and hidden audits, steal some of that money. Jack Warner, a FIFA official, was caught embezzling development funds. The Republic of Congo's Football Association president received a life sentence for stealing $1.1 million of FIFA funds. A Venezuelan official was banned for financial wrongdoing. FIFA claims all members submit independent audits. But FIFA does not make these audits public. Let me translate. We are stealing and we don't want anyone to know how much. So the system is this: extract maximum money from fans like Andy Milne through ticket pricing. Distribute some of that money to 211 nations to secure their votes. Watch as officials in those nations steal portions of that money. Keep no public records. Repeat every 4 years. It's not corruption. It's the business model. But FIFA's extraction is just one expression of a much larger system. Thomas Sankara, the revolutionary who turned Burkina Faso from a starving colony into a self-sufficient nation in just 4 years, and was murdered by the very powers he threatened, understood something crucial about how imperialism works in the modern age. He said, "Imperialism is a system of exploitation that occurs not only in the brutal form of those who come with guns to conquer territory. Imperialism often occurs in more subtle forms: a loan, food aid, blackmail. We are fighting a system that allows a handful of men on earth to rule all of humanity. This is what FIFA represents. Not the imperialism of yesterday, colonial soldiers taking land, but the imperialism of today, a handful of executives taking control of something beloved by billions and extracting infinite profit from it. FIFA functions as a colonial power. It decides which nations can host. It determines which officials can work. It controls every aspect of football's greatest event. And through ticket pricing, merchandise, broadcasting rights, sponsorships, it extracts wealth from the global south and channels it to the global north. An African player from a poor nation dreams of the World Cup. That player's country qualifies. But the price of attending? Beyond reach. The price of merchandise? Unaffordable. The profits from their participation? Controlled by FIFA. This is imperialism without soldiers. This is empire that smiles. And it uses the language of universalism to justify it. The World Cup is for everyone, FIFA claims. But it's only for those who can pay. Everyone else gets to watch from a screen, while their passion is monetized by corporations thousands of miles away. Sankara also said, "He who feeds you, controls you." FIFA feeds the world's passion for football. And in feeding it, FIFA controls the terms, the price, the access, the narrative. This is the empire we live in. But let's return to the fundamental hypocrisy. The World Cup's slogan, every tournament, is that it brings the world together. It transcends politics. It's about sport, about pure human competition, about a moment where nationality doesn't matter and shared passion does. Yet here in 2026, we're seeing the opposite. A Somali referee denied entry to the United States because of his passport and his country's relationship with America. Not because of anything he did. A Ghanaian player denied entry to Canada based on allegations, not convictions. Officials from Iran and Iraq blocked because of geopolitics. Iraqi players searched invasively because of their nationality. The World Cup is supposed to unite, but immigration authorities are dividing. The World Cup is supposed to celebrate sport, but ticket prices are excluding billions of people. Equipment is being stolen. Gun violence is erupting near team facilities. But here's the most revealing hypocrisy of all. In 2022, at the Qatar World Cup, the German national team did something extraordinary. All 11 starting players covered their mouths in their team photo before their match against Japan. It was a silent protest, powerful statement. They declared that human rights were non-negotiable. They said FIFA was muzzling them. The German Football Federation posted, "It wasn't about making a political statement. Human rights are non-negotiable. That should be taken for granted, but it still isn't the case. That's why this message is so important to us." The world watched. The protest was broadcast globally. Germany was standing up for something sacred, human dignity. Now, in 2026, here in North America, we have the same violations, and worse, immigration authorities denying entry to referees and players. Equipment theft from national teams. Gun violence near team facilities. A climate of fear around borders and belonging. But where is that same German team today? So the German team covered their mouths in Qatar. But they stay silent in 2026. This is what imperialism looks like. Not consistent principles, but selective morality. The rules apply to distant nations. But when violations happen in Western countries, we don't see the mouth covering. We don't see the protests. The German players' silence in 2026 is more deafening than their mouth covering in 2022, because it reveals the truth. This was never about universal human rights. It was about appearing to care when the victim was sufficiently foreign, sufficiently different, sufficiently other. The World Cup, which claims to represent universal human values, is instead displaying the raw face of imperialism. Selective enforcement, selective justice, and silence when it matters most to the West. And yet, resistance is possible. In New York, mayoral candidate Zoran Mamdani did something radical. He secured 1,000 tickets, 1,000, and distributed them via lottery at just $50 each to New York residents. $50. Not $11,000. Not $11.5 million. $50. 1,000 people who otherwise couldn't afford the World Cup got to go. 1,000 people whose passion for football wouldn't be measured by their bank account. 1,000 tickets for a city of 8 million. It's pathetically small in scale, but it's revolutionary in principle. The idea that some things shouldn't be left to market forces. That access shouldn't depend on wealth. That's what happens when people act. Then Ontario, Canada passed a law banning resale of tickets above face value. FIFA didn't fight. They didn't sue. They didn't lobby. They complied immediately. Why? Because regulation works. When law constrains extraction, extraction stops. When governments regulate monopoly power crumbles. The narrative we're sold is that this is inevitable, that capitalism is too powerful, that imperialism is unstoppable, that FIFA's extraction is just how the world works. It's not. Thomas Sankara understood this. He said, "When the people stand up, imperialism trembles. Imperialism doesn't tremble because people suffer silently. It trembles because people organize. It trembles because governments regulate. It trembles because citizens demand that certain things, culture, sport, joy, human connection, not be left to market forces." A mayor in New York showed that individuals with vision can create access. Canada showed that governments with laws can regulate corporations. Both proved that the extraction doesn't have to continue. The World Cup should be for everyone, not just for the rich, not just for those with the right passport, not just for the nations aligned with American interests, but making that real requires action. It requires New York-style boldness. It requires Ontario-style regulation. It requires movements that say, this matters too much to commodify. This belongs to all of us. The irony is bitter. A tournament supposed to unite humanity is instead revealing how deeply divided we remain, how imperialism still operates, how the global South still serves the global North, how monopoly power still extracts endlessly. But the Ontario victory and the New York lottery show us something else. That imperialism can be resisted. That regulation works. That when people organize, systems change. Will we demand that FIFA lower ticket prices? That immigration laws treat all nations fairly? That a referee from Somalia gets the same respect as a referee from Germany? That World Cup participation doesn't require choosing between a pension and a dream? Or will we accept imperialism's new face? The smiling face of a sporting corporation that extracts everything while claiming to unite everyone. That choice is ours to make. We've seen it's possible. The question is whether we have the courage to make it real. And if you want more stories about how power operates in our world, about imperialism, about resistance, about the systems we can change, subscribe to the channel now. Because history is not written by corporations. History is written by movements. Lastly, remember to organize, resist, be unbreakable.